Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Dianna Deeney. Hi,
Dianna.
Fred.
Hey, we were just starting to chat, and I think I asked you a couple weeks ago if you had some time to schedule, and you said, "Oh, I'm going off to the ASQ Risk and Reliability Division conference and taking some time off to see Boston and all that cool stuff." So welcome back. And how was the conference? What did you think of that?
Yeah, thanks. I thought it was very informative. The people there were very nice, and they presented some useful use cases of reliability and also some cutting edge stuff. Some heavy mathematical concepts and then some soft skills. So it was a good mix and it was a good group. I was really happy that I went.
Well, that's cool. You mentioned just briefly one of them was Wayne Nelson, who I've looked up to him for so long, and he's got hundreds and hundreds of papers out there and books and all kinds of cool stuff. But it sounded like he was on a theme of collaboration.
He did, yes. He presented a couple times. Well, I think maybe 3 times he presented at least. And he closed out the conference. And he closed with talk about collaboration. He pulled out some of his collaboration efforts that he's had over his career. And it was a lot of fun to sit in on that presentation because he talked about people that he worked with and what they accomplished. And there was also some humor involved. He also talked about the lessons learned from those collaborations. So that was a good way to close out the conference, just leaving us with a sense of collaboration with each other. And that's one of the reasons that we go to these events, right?
Well, there's that, but I don't know. I've been to some conferences that everybody shows up, they talk at the participants, and then you get 5 minutes of chit chat in the hallway, and to the amount of send me your slides, and I think it's a missed opportunity when that happens. The way you described it, it was collaboration being at a conference. It was some of the work or papers he's done. And that struck a chord with me. Is one of the things that Carl Carlson and I have been working on for years, and is a book, and we hope to have it out sometime soon. We're working on it. But what struck me was that I've learned so much working closely with Carl and going through concepts and topics. And I'm sure Wayne probably mentioned that, like, he brings certain strengths to the table, and then he's got somebody else that maybe is a material scientist that's not his field, but they bring in insights that help make it a stronger paper or a stronger breakthrough or improvement or whatever.
That was a theme of his presentation. Yeah. Focusing on what he was good at, what he brought, but then also recognizing what the other person brought and how they were able to collaborate on something that ended up being really useful and eye-opening and changing for whatever project that they were working on.
Well, it's one of the things that I think reliability engineers in general just have to realize is we're not designing the product. No,
right.
We're not manufacturing it. We're not picking the suppliers. By our very nature, we have to collaborate with the rest of the team in order to influence those decisions, to support those choices they make and the options that are presented to them, provide the right information and so on. But if it doesn't do much good at all for a quality or reliability engineer to walk in the room and go, "No, you can't do that," and because they'll just close the door and you'll be on the outside.
Exactly. Yeah, there's an important step of communicating or letting the people that you're collaborating with know that you're not a barrier or a stop button. You really want the same thing, and that you want to help them do what it is that they want to achieve, and just do it in a good way that'll achieve good results. And that is something that is sometimes hard to communicate, especially when reliability engineering is sometimes seen as like a black box of magic.
Well, and some of that's our own fault. And there's plenty of other industries and professions that do that. They create their own language, they create their own procedures and techniques, and it's only taught in reliability books and reliability conferences that, if you only get to go to one conference a year, do you go to the mechanical engineering one or do you go to the reliability one? It's kind of we all do that to ourselves to some extent. But the idea is that, I chuckled there a moment ago because it reminded me of, I was teaching a class to a group of engineers, and it was some of these arcane or mystical reliability topics that we talk about. And they were struggling with it. And one of the engineers looked at me and they were working on a medical device that actually was a radiation therapy stuff for cancer. And he looked at me and said, "Come on, give us a break. We're trying to cure cancer here."
Literally.
Yeah. And well, it was another group, and they were actually rocket scientist type people, working on rockets. And they looked at me, and I looked at them and says, "Why are you struggling with this? I thought you guys were rocket scientists." And they're like, "Yeah, right. We've heard that before."
Yeah. Yeah. I have some friends that work in that field, and yeah, they hear that all the time.
Yeah. But part of it is recognizing that wherever you sit in the organization, you probably don't have all the answers. Not probably is, I'd say, fairly certain, or certainly you don't have all the answers. You don't have all the insights. You don't have all the solutions. Bringing just problems is also a problem if that's all we do, is like you mentioned the stop button idea. I think that collaboration part is akin to what that, we're trying to cure cancer here, is understanding what is it we're trying to do? What is the objective? And if our objective is you just have to make it more reliable, that may not be the objective for the rest of the organization. It's like we need to create a device that actually safely administers this radiation therapy. That's a different objective than just make it more reliable. It might be a part of it, a piece of that overall objective, but it's not the whole shooting match there, so to speak.
Yeah, there was a time early in my career when one of my managers, there was a time early in my career where one of my managers, during one of our one-on-ones, he said, we just saw the CEO give a town hall speech, and isn't it exciting which direction he's taking the company and the new initiatives that we're going to be exploring. And what did you think of that? And at the time, I was every day I was gowning up to go into the clean room to work on machines. Mm-hmm. So I honestly said, I really don't see how his vision of the work that I'm doing. But when you're stepping into reliability and quality engineering, it's important to be able to relate our recommendations and our feedback to the team with those broader business objectives and quality objectives, and even at the project level, what it is you're trying to accomplish. And you're right, it's important to understand from where you're standing in the organization. You need to understand where it is everybody's trying to go. And that does take some time. Maybe you have to stop what you're doing and really realign yourself to that.
And there's a trap in that. What I've seen some people do is that, CEO just said we're turning left up ahead. And so because we're turning left up ahead, you have to do what I tell you. They kind of make they attach it to the vision or the direction or some statement from senior managers, but not make it clear how that relates to what you're doing. right? They just kind of go, oh, well, that's the new division, so I'm fully on that, so we have to go this way. When
Mm-hmm.
it's just, it's not genuine, it's not real, it's not in it. Part of it is the empathy part, is what's in it for them. It's not what's in it for me. It's nobody else needs to know that unless they want to, or ask about it. But if I'm working with a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, and we're trying to get this product out and get it to meet the objectives and so on, well, what are their objectives? What is their driving force here? Are they trying to do? Is it a new innovation that they're struggling with, or is it a troublesome set of components that some work and some don't, and that's kind of putting them behind schedule? Or is it at the end of the year or end of the project, they're going to be asked, well, is it good enough? And can you help them answer that question? Those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. So that's even a step down from the project level, is just understanding what it is they're dealing with and trying to do whatever they're trying to do, right?
Right. Well, I think then the next level up is I often tell the story of this young procurement engineer showed up at my desk, and she said, hey, my boss said I have to come talk to you. And I'm like, I've never had anybody from procurement come talk to me willingly. And she was, contemplating a new component that was half the price, and the procurement manager had already had run-ins with me because of making these cost cuts without really thinking through the reliability part of it. And so we went through the two data sheets, and they had fit rates on them. And I said, you realize that we use a lot of these parts, and if that fit rate actually, well, and she's like, well, it's such a small number. I said, okay. We use like 25 of these per system, and we make, 1 million of these systems a week, kind of thing. Those numbers are small, but now they add up. And okay. And then how much does it cost when something fails? And she had no idea. It's not part of her department. It wasn't part of her world. She was working with suppliers all day in and day out. And so we did a real quick, simple back of the envelope math and said, all right, if you save a nickel per part, it'll cost us $50 more per machine that we ship. And is that a cost savings? And she goes, no. Walked away. But part of it was since I knew that manager, it was they were driven to do, and their charter was cost reduction,
right.
Get cheaper parts. But part of it is understanding that and going, well, let's just reframe that, right? Is that really a cost reduction? And I think that's why they were there asking me questions. But the working with other folks is how do we help them understand whether it's a bigger picture, or how is it connected into the overall theme of what we're trying to do or what the objective is. But I think the vast majority of the time when we're dealing with collaboration is, how can I help? If I go into it and working with you, and it's how can I help you solve a problem or make a breakthrough or get the credit that's due, it makes the collaboration two-way. It makes it easier to do. If it's this, I write chapter 1 and you write chapter 2, and then they never get reconciled in the same tone or voice or pacing or whatever, then it's, well, that's just two separate papers stuck in a book together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not collaboration at that point.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And it's also, when you're working with other people, accepting that what they're telling you is their wisdom, and being able to accept that and work with it, and move forward with the collaboration with it.
Yeah. Well, there are some people that I like, no, I'm not working with you. They just tell me I'm wrong and going to do it my way or the highway. And I'm like, okay, see you later. Bye.
Yeah.
There's some where you just go, this is just not going to work. You just irritate the daylights out of me, so I'm not going to make this work. Luckily, that's been the exception. Vast majority of people want to share what they know. And if you're open and willing to learn from that, I think then you have you both benefit. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I think is what you're getting at there. It's but I mean, it's collaboration's different than just working on a paper. I think it's working on solving a problem. Is we often, like in our failure analysis processes, the 8D team is one of the first steps is we'll build a team. Like get the right people in the room. Or FMEA is put the team together, construct it and work together. So many of the different things we do, you can brainstorm all by yourself, but it's just not as satisfying.
No.
So
no, having those different viewpoints and different backgrounds and even just a different perspective of what it is that you're trying to solve. You might be solving the same problem, but you have a different perspective and viewpoint of it. That's really valuable in being able to move forward with something that's a good design or a good result.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking back to years ago. I was working with a production line doing circuit boards, and one of the connectors that was a through-hole connector would float. It didn't snap into the board. It didn't have any retaining feature on it. It just had leads going through the holes in the board, basically. And so when the solder hit it, it would touch one side of the leads first, and then the other side would float up, and so that it would be crooked in the board, or it wouldn't even get soldered on some of the leads. And so that was a problem. And so we recognized that. And we heard about it remote, and we were close to the engineering teams. And so one of the mechanical engineers, I got an idea for this. So he created this jig that was about $500, and all these gears and clamps and hold downs, and you had to fit a board in it just right and tighten these things just right. And, and he had torque specs on it. I was like, really? This is a production line here. And so he had a couple of them made up, and happened to have a trip to where this production line was, and we're in Asia, and in Singapore actually, and we brought this thing out to the line, and the folks there were very polite, and they kind of looked at it and, okay, well, we'll give it a try, and it was a pain. It was going to add so much time to the process, and they were bulky and all these other problems with it, and it was pretty obvious this was not a good solution. So one of the guys on the line said, I've got an idea. Let's try again tomorrow. And we get there the next day, and he had a little bin full of sandbags. It looked like the little square, like 2-inch square sandbag or bag full of pellets of some sort that you might throw, like playing a tic-tac-toe game in your yard, where you're throwing these little bags at a target, for example, or something like that. And it was material that would not melt or catch on fire in the wave soldering machine. And all he did was just drop it on top of the connector after, it's going into the board, and there was like 2 connectors, and he dropped those on there, and it'd come through the deal. It'd hold it down perfectly. It'd get soldered, and they just pick up the bags and put it in a bin and take it back to the front. It cost about $40 for 1,000 of these little bags that he had custom made overnight. And it took just the time of just dropping it on and pick it up. That was all it took. And,
that's great.
And it was like, the mechanical engineer was dumbstruck. He's like, there was a part of one of my classes was keep it simple. But I spent all that time learning about gears and cams and torque and forces and all the other stuff. I just wanted to use that stuff. That's what I do every day. Like, okay. But that idea of seeing it from different points of view and different perspectives, and here's somebody on the production line that said, I think there's a better way to do this, and didn't want to challenge anybody. Didn't want to know, let's just try it. And it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Much to the chagrin of the mechanical engineer that spent, 2 days in a CAD system drawing up and designing this thing.
Well, it's I guess the mechanical engineer, he still has his knowledge base that he can do something for a future project.
Yeah.
but keeping it simple is usually best. So maybe in that point, if they were having that trouble, if the engineer and the operator had worked together or talked together about it, they may have come to a good resolution a little faster. Do you think?
Oh, I think so. The hard part was the cultural differences. The folks in Singapore on that production line is they didn't say, no, that's not going to work. They wouldn't challenge. They won't say no. It's just not part of the culture. They might say, that might be difficult, which means there's no way in hell that's going to work. It translates to that, essentially. But they won't tell you no. It's just not part of the language.
It sounds like my mother-in-law with my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, she'll never say no. No, maybe let's try a different idea.
Yeah, try distraction.
Anyway,
You need to try something else. All right. But the sometimes the role that we play in the collaboration is pull the right expertise together and provide that bridge for the listening and for try it and let's do those kinds of things. Sometimes our role is to just, what is the actual problem? Can we define it real well? And sometimes it's, contribute a little bit that sparks another contribution, and then you get something really useful. Collaboration can take on so many different approaches and realms and so on. It's not always two bylines on an article, for example. But it's part and parcel to what we do as reliability engineers. Is we just have to work with other people. And technically, to me, that means that's a collaboration if you do it well.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm glad you got to go to the conference and see Wayne presenting. It sounds like he's done so much work over the years, and I'm glad he shared some of the insights and ideas that he's worked with other folks and brought that to light. That's cool. But it's so if you're listening to this and it's like, well, how do I do this? How do I break through this? Or what's working or not working for you? We'd love to hear from you. You can head over to accendoreliability.com/go/SOR, and there you can find a couple different ways to get in touch with us. Dianna and I and the other hosts of the show are available through the LinkedIn or our About pages on the Accendo site. So plenty of ways for you to get in touch. So think of it as collaboration. Get in touch with us. Give us a topic or an idea or a question, and we'll work with you and talk about it and share it with the rest of the folks. So it's a thin form of collaboration, but hopefully we can work together to share knowledge across our discipline.
Well, that's a great way to look at it, though.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that'll get a few more questions showing up for us. That would be good. All right. Well, thanks so much, Dianna. And I'm glad you had a great trip. And you're probably already starting working on your next paper. So,
yeah. I got a lot of ideas and things to share. Yeah, it was an awesome trip. And if you can go to conferences, they're worth going to if you can go. And even the remote ones, they're also good. Yeah. They're worth it.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Dan, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye, Fred.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.